Hello, 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 and welcome. This is Debrena Jackson Gandy, Master Life Coach, National Best-Selling Author, and founder of Juicy Woman University. And I am all about teaching women a new paradigm that allows them to experience more joy, more peace, more ease, more grace, and more flow. So, welcome to my Aligning Your Life 101 video seminar. So, what I'm going to be sharing in these next few minutes that we have together is 5 critical shifts, very different from what we have been taught and shown and told as we have grown up, as we have been trained up, as we have been conditioned and programmed as women. Because you may notice that the way that we've been taught and shown and told has us experiencing way too much stress, way too much anxiety, way too much time scarcity. So the 5 shifts that I'm going to be sharing with you in this video seminar are going to help you align yourself with more of what works for your feminine spirit, more of what works for your feminine essence, and what is more aligned with how you are divinely designed. I believe that it is our birthright to experience life more abundantly. The book of truth that I call the Holy Bible lays out the Creator's intention for all of us. And that means that the highest and best of all that God has to offer, life more abundantly, is God's intention for each of us. So these 5 shifts that I'm going to share with you will help you align more with the truth of who you are. And I'm here to tell you, I am not operating from concepts or theories that I have borrowed or gotten from someone else. This is from a couple different places. One, my lived experience, where I have had my life be a divine laboratory to explore and investigate and actually discover what is required for us to operate in a different and new way from a different and new paradigm. I call that the sacred self-caring woman's paradigm. It's the paradigm of the juicy woman. So these 5 shifts that I'm going to share with you are going to help you begin to align yourself more so with that sacred self-caring woman's way of living and moving and relating and interacting and communicating and being in her daily life. So I hope that you have your pen and your paper, something to write on, so you can not only hear it, but you can chronicle it. That's very important. So let's begin with the 5 shifts that will support you in aligning your life, more so with the truth of who you are, your feminine essence, your feminine core, so that you can experience more joy, more peace, more ease, more grace, and more flow. So let's start with number 1. The first critical shift that supports you in aligning your life is making the shift from what I call self-abuse, self-neglect, negative self-sacrifice, and the martyrdom syndrome over to the sacred self-caring consciousness. Starting from a very young age, I have found in my research that we start to receive inputs, cues, and clues about how to interact with others. My research shows that actually starting at around age 3 or 4, that we start to be trained into ways of engaging that hinge on us expressing our love through doing and caretaking. That's a wonderful thing until it becomes a burden, until you start to get your identity through your doing, until your validation comes through your doing and you become enslaved to that way of thinking and being and relating. And unfortunately, for so many of us, now that we're adults, we are still shackled by that programming that started to be installed at a very, very young age. 3 and 4, 36 months on the planet, 48 months on the planet. So when you start to align yourself more with the sacred self-caring consciousness instead of self-neglect or negative self-sacrifice or martyrdom, everyone else first and you last or least, it requires that our orientation and our values and our priorities also shift. So what are the shifts in our priorities, in the level of our thinking, in what we are committed to when we decide to align and make this first shift to the sacred self-caring consciousness? So a sacred self-caring woman, when she is operating from the level of thinking of sacred self-care, is committed to her mind being clear. Now, when you look around at how many people feel overwhelmed and how many people make bad decisions because their mind is not clear, we can understand how this is an unusual commitment, unfortunately, to having a clear mind, orienting your day, your schedule, so that you are in a place of thinking straight, thinking clearly, not foggy-minded, not distracted with your mind going 100 places. So what would the shifts and how you move through your life, how you structure your day, do you need to make that will support you in having a clear mind? One of the things that I do, even though the American pop culture is really big on what I call the reboot way of living, ripping and running, efforting, busyness, overwhelm, and overdoing, those are norms of the old paradigm I want to help you step out of and then realign with a new and different paradigm, a higher dimension of living paradigm. So, one of the things that the pop culture often recommends is multitasking. Well, I stopped trying to multitask many years ago because what I found is I may check more off of my to-do list, but I also might make more mistakes, or I might forget something, or I might not be totally present. And so I focus on one thing at a time. If I'm on the phone, I'm not also trying to type an email. If I'm on my cell phone, I'm not also trying to check my voicemail at my office. If I'm driving, I'm not trying to be on my phone. I'm trying to focus. Now, if I pull over into a parking lot to make a phone call, that's different. So one of the ways that supports me in having a clear mind is nixing the multitasking, learning how to focus, learning how to be present, learn to be thorough, complete with the task at hand. And that also includes with humans, with other folks, being focused. Okay? I also have a to-do list that I keep beside my bed at night, so that before I go to bed, I'm actually dumping out of my mind onto that paper anything that would have me a little preoccupied in my thinking as I'm trying to go to sleep and sleep well and thoroughly and wake up well rested. That's one of the things I do to support having a clear mind, is that nightly to-do list that sits next to my bed on the nightstand. Little tablet where I can rip off that piece of paper, bring it with me into the office, and take care of what needs to be taken care of the next day. So that's the first shift. The second shift is from pursuing happiness to having and experiencing and connecting to your joy. Now, one of the founding documents of these United States of America says that we are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so many of us, and too many of us, have fulfilled on that beautifully. We have been chasing, striving after, seeking happiness. And where have we been seeking it? Externally. Where have we been seeking it? Outside of ourselves. And guess what? How's that been working for us? How's that been working for us? Why is there such a high level of dissatisfaction? Why is there such a high level of unfulfillment? Why do way too many of us take drugs to help us feel a sense of peace? Have addictions because we're chasing after that sense of peace. Substances that we abuse, including food, because we're chasing after that sense of peace. And yet what we have is a sense of restlessness internally. So here's the great news. That is a dupe. We've been bamboozled. Because when you look at the book of truth, that's the book of the Holy Bible for me. The Holy Bible is the book of truth for me. Basic instructions for being and living excellently. That's the Debrenaism for the acronym. And in the book of truth, one of many, by the way, it says in the book of John, in the 15th chapter, this is the Creator speaking to us, the created. And the Creator says, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. So let's break that down. The Creator is speaking to us, saying, my joy has been put in you, and it's to remain there. It's to stay there. It's to not leave you. And it's not to be half full. It's not to be on E for empty. It's supposed to remain full. And that your joy may remain full. So the source of our joy comes from a place beyond us, unlimited. And it was put in us. And the desire of the Creator is for it to remain on full and become our joy. So it is our assignment, it is our charge to connect to that inner river of joy, that reservoir of joy, that reality of joy that has been built into our being by a loving Creator. That's why for example, in Juicy Woman University, my 12-month life transformation course, we talk about daily prayer and meditation as a practice. Not a hit and miss, not once in a while, but as a practice, as built into our day, the same way brushing our teeth has been built into our day, non-negotiable. Because that is sacred, set aside time where you can intentionally connect to that joy. In Psalm it says, in your presence is fullness of joy. So when you connect to your joy and the source of your joy, that's where you start to experience a fullness that you cannot get from trying to pursue happiness. I remember many years ago now, when I went to college. I went to a college out of state. I grew up here in Washington State, and I went to a college out of state in Southern California that had some of the most physically beautiful people I'd ever seen, the co-eds at this particular college. And I thought, going down to Southern California, this particular college was right near the beach. You could see the beach from the campus. Sunshine every day. Students coming from all these wealthy families and being beautiful, that I was going to be around some of the most deeply satisfied and fulfilled people. But I found something to the contrary. I heard so much complaint, dissatisfaction, frustration in the spirit, restlessness of the spirit. And I was really confounded. And I asked myself the question, with all that is present, all that so many of us said, if we had it, we would be deeply satisfied and fulfilled. It's present here. And yet, there's still an inner restlessness. What's missing? And later on, several years later, when I wrote my first national book, Sacred Pampering Principles, it mentioned the critical ingredient: people being connected to their joy, aka the Creator's joy. And if you miss doing that, if you're not aware you need to do that, then fulfillment will elude you in this lifetime. So that's the second shift. So mind, body, spirit, heart, and energy. I realized there were some other pieces of the shift of the sacred self-caring woman. I mentioned a clear mind, but I also want to go back and add in a well body, free of disease, free of even minor aches and pains, and free of medication. That is a commitment of a sacred self-caring woman. Clear mind, well body, full spirit, which is where that being connected to joy comes in. Open heart. What does it take to have an open heart? Because you know what? Most of us have a closed or partially closed heart. Things happen to us, experiences, situations happen. We get offended, we get insulted, we get upset, we get angry, and our heart's like a portal, so it closes bit by bit by bit. Each time one of those situations happens. And that's part of life. But if we don't reopen our heart, it can get to a point where we're trying to give and receive love through a pinhole. So one of the commitments of a sacred self-caring woman, one of the shifts too that we want to make, is being committed to an open heart, which means doing our healing and forgiveness work, not running from it and not avoiding it. And then lastly, as part of the shift to being more sacred self-caring, is releasing the grip on the focus on time and shifting to more of a focus on managing our energy wisely. With whom, where, how, and on what is our energy going to each day, each week, each month, each hour? Is it aligned with what we say is important to us? Is it aligned with our energy being renewed? Is it aligned with there being reciprocity? Is it aligned with rejuvenation, revitalization, or is it more aligned with depletion, being worn out, being fatigued, being tired, and being frustrated from overdoing? So those are all micro shifts inside of the first big shift from self-neglect, negative self-sacrifice, and martyrdom to that of a sacred self-caring woman. Okay, so we've covered two major shifts. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is the shift from seeing and perceiving your body as a thing or vehicle or an amazing machine or an amazing instrument to recognizing that your body is a divine living temple. And out of the Creator's love for you, the Creator put the Creator's Spirit inside of you, called the Holy Spirit. And the address for that is you. You are the divine living temple that houses and holds that holy divine spirit, that peace of the Creator that the Creator gave just to you. And we all have a little piece. The shift from your body is a thing to take care of, to wash, to exercise, to clothe, to a divine living temple. You know, several years ago when my daughters, our oldest and my middle daughter were 12 and 13, it was time to have the sex talk. And I said, okay, young ladies, I'm going to be taking you out to lunch, and over dessert, we're going to have a conversation about sex and your bodies. And of course, they roll their eyes and, oh my gosh, Mom. But I went ahead and did it, of course. And when it came time for dessert, I said, okay, let's begin our conversation. And I said, this is not going to be a conversation about keep your legs shut. Do we need to go down and get birth control at some point? The conversation was about their bodies as a divine living temple. I wanted them to understand that. And I asked them, tell me about a temple. Give me some characteristics. And they said things like, it's beautiful. It's manicured outside. It's well taken care of. It's not cluttered. When you walk in, there's peace and there's quiet. You might even take off your shoes, or you might even lower your voice. There might be sweet incense floating through the air, or the sound of gospel music, or praise and worship music floating through the air. And they went on in their description. I said, yes, yes, yes. I said, and you, my dears, our divine living temple. So what does that mean for how you perceive you, for how you care for you, and who you allow entry into the temple? So I know for myself, when I would sit in church, I would often hear, and I've visited many churches in my years, I would hear pastors villainize the body. And it would create conflict in me because I could not understand how God could create what God said was a divine living temple. And then in other places in that book of truth, the Holy Bible, it would say that the flesh is the downfall of the spirit and it wars with the spirit. To me, that was a contradiction. It wasn't until just a few years ago, given how long I've been attending church, it wasn't until just a few years ago where I really went deeper in my study of the Bible, not just going by what was spoken to me from the pulpit or what I may have learned in Bible study or heard from someone else, but me doing my own Bible study, me getting a Strong's Concordance so that I can understand the meaning of specific terms in the context of Scripture and spiritual growth and development. So you can't go get a Webster's dictionary and look up words that are in Scripture. That's secular. We're talking spiritual truths. And I looked up this word flesh, and I could have had a V8 because all these years, based upon how it was teed up from the pulpit, I thought that flesh meant the physical body. When I looked it up during one of my Bible studies, I realized and came to learn that flesh in 90% of the uses in Scripture means the conditioned nature of our thinking, the worldly thinking, fleshly thinking, not the mortal body. That's the divine living temple. That changed everything for me. And it made sense because the body was not sinful. The body got instructions from the mind. Hence the reason, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's the command center for the body. If you're laying on the ground and you're considered dead, your mind is absent, your spirit is absent, then your body is not going to respond to anything. The mind in the body is the command center. So that was very liberating to recognize that this body, this divine living temple, is not sinful. It can be it can be involved in sin, not of its own choosing, but following instructions of the mind. But it's divine, and it's our ally. So that's a major shift, and an area I'm still working on, because I really have just begun to really align my thinking, my food choices, care of my body, amount of sleep, etc., with that shift. Just in these last few years, like for real, for real. So that's shift number 3. Shift number 4 has to do with integrity. Integrity of your word, what you say you actually do, what you value is reflected in what you do and your choices, but also that there's an alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And when we're out of integrity, one of those is not in alignment. When we're in integrity, which also aligns our power, concentrates our personal power, our thoughts, our words, and our deeds and actions are congruent. That is a major cornerstone of teaching in Juicy Woman University, because I have found that if we have cracks in that basic integrity foundation as individuals, that anything we try to put on top of it, it will be shaky. So one of the cornerstones of the Juicy Woman lifestyle, one of the cornerstones of aligned living, is getting our integrity tight, right, and solid. Looking at places where there's gaps or disconnects between what we think and we claim is important to us, how we speak, the words we choose, the vibrations called spoken words that we speak, and then our decisions, our choices, our behaviors, our daily actions. It is so acceptable for those to be unaligned in this American culture. And so one of the shifts we get to make is from those being disconnected, incongruent, to our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. Our thoughts, our words, and our actions being congruent. Lastly is from chaos and clutter and confusion to order. And I don't only mean order in your outer world, but also order in your inner world. So how do you start to make the shift to more order? I call it the subtraction principle. What do you need to subtract? I'm sitting here in my office right now, my home office, and 5 huge Glad bags later, filled with shredded paper, carried out of here. I now have more order in my office. Hanging on to papers because I said one day, I might need them. 5 huge Glad bags of shredded papers. I had too much stuff I was hanging on to. I had too many clothes in my closet, too many pairs of shoes that I hadn't worn in a year, clothes I had not put on my body in a year. So part of order is subtraction, getting rid of clutter, excess stuff, because it holds energy. That's why when we release stuff, when we lighten up, when we move stuff out, we feel better. It's all interconnected. But it also means order in your inner world. What do you need to subtract? What low-level emotions do you need to release? What thoughts that are not serving you, that are constrictive or limiting, do you need to release? So, this gives you a framework for 5 major and critical shifts that you can begin to make on the journey to aligning your life. Now, is it going to take time? Absolutely. Are there actions involved? Absolutely. Is there learning how to change your mind and your thinking about yourself and life and even God? Absolutely. But it gives you some starting places. And so I hope in the 5 things I've laid out that you've heard some things that apply to you, that you can put into play immediately, whether it's that to-do list, whether it's thinking of your body differently, whether it is doing your healing and forgiveness work, whether it is building sacred prayer and meditation time into your day at the top of your morning, by the way, I found is the most powerful. To maybe deciding to put different things into your body temple that have more life force and high vibration food, to what you might need to subtract that's excess in your outer world, what you might need to subtract in your inner world that's burdening you and weighing you down. And then doing a self-check to see where my thoughts, my words, and my actions not be quite lined up, not quite be congruent. So there's also a Align Your Life self-assessment you got as part of this video seminar. And so it goes through several life areas and it gives you a chance to see how you're doing. So please, please, please be sure to get out your assessment and do it. And I recommend that you do it after watching this seminar and you come back in 3 months and you do it again to see how you're coming along. So I want to thank you for joining me for this video seminar. Thank you for joining me as I use my hands a lot. That's just one of the things Debrena does. And as I said, these things are not just concept and theory. These are all part of the Juicy Woman lifestyle. It's a new paradigm for living that I hope becomes a reality for every single one of us because it is glorious. It is glorious. And a life of more joy and ease and peace and grace and flow is our birthright. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again very soon. Maybe it will be in the next upcoming Juicy Woman University. Maybe it will be in my Love Academy. Maybe it will be in some of my other advanced and amazing offerings or one of my elite retreats. So you stay blessed, you stay beautiful, stay amazing, Sacred One. This is Debrena Jackson Gandy signing off. Mwah.